All right, today I want to mainly talk about the early thought of Marx. If one had to summarize early Marx in a single sentence, it would be, the essence of the human is labor. But don't get excited too quickly. This idea isn't as smooth as it sounds to begin with. The core proposition that sentence itself, the essence of the human is labor, comes primarily from texts like the economic and philosophic manuscripts and the German ideology. Marx directly opens by stating that what distinguishes humans from animals is their ability to consciously and purposefully transform nature and in doing so, realize their essence through labor. Consciousness in this sense means turning imagined goals into reality through labor, leaving traces in the material world and thereby becoming a species being. It sounds poetic, but if you look at it from a structuralist, psychoanalytic, or even existentialist perspective, your brows might furrow. Second point, if labor equals self-realization, then what exactly is labor to begin with? Let's clarify what labor implies here. Marx's conception, at least, the following metaphors are in play. First, labor is practically. It's not a fantasy within the mind. Second, it is purposeful, not animal instinct. Third, it is objectifying, not merely being in the world, but leaving human imprints on it. Fourth, it is social labor, expresses the species nature, not individual self-gratification. In short, the kind of labor Marx envisions isn't farming, and certainly not wage work. It's the act of turning internal images into external realities, kind of creative production coupled with social exchange. Then the problem arises. If that's the case, do religion, art, and philosophy count as labor? Here I'll merge his early views with some mid-period historical materialism. You say humans realize themselves through labor, so take Heidegger as an example. He retreats to a cabin in the woods, writes being in time, and reshapes the trajectory of global intellectual history. Was that labor? A priest spreads faith and soothes the inner suffering of millions. Was that labor? An artist creates a painting that lets people feel their own existence, achieve a kind of elevation. Was that labor? If you say these aren't labor, just ideology, then aren't you denying half of human historical activity? But if you do count these as labor, then why are they often labeled alienated labor, or even tools for alienation? Early Marx never resolved this. He simultaneously declares that the essence of the human is labor, while calling religion the opium of the people. This creates a contradiction. On the one hand, he wants to treat humanity's creative impulse as essential. On the other, he dismisses most human creative output as ideological distortion. Finally, alienation. I think this is the real nuclear core of his early theory. The concept of alienation is heavily borrowed from Hegel after all. Marx spent his youth immersed in Hegelian thought, even said that Hegel had things upside down, head for feet, feet for head. Alienation means the product of your labor doesn't belong to you. But to capital, so labor turns the person into a commodity. The process of labor becomes coercive. Not free creativity, it's a means of alienation. Relationships between workers reduced to mere exchange, those social ties are severed. A person loses their species being and becomes something controlled by objects, for instance. Take terms like labor power, or the idea that people are turned into machines, into tools of production. These are all forms of dehumanization, and the emotional charge of this theory is extremely strong. But in terms of specificity, it's quite murky. It doesn't adequately explain modern forms of work or voluntary employment. And the further you go with it, the more alienation becomes a kind of black box model. If you feel bad, it's alienation. If you feel oppressed, it's alienation again. It merges psychological experience with material structure without clear boundaries. So, in the end, my summary is, his intellectual temperament is a mix of strong humanism and the legacy of German classical philosophy, namely, Hegel. His mobilizing logic is, you've been alienated, you must become yourself again. Become human, therefore. Fight capital. But his blind spot is, he cannot explain why philosophy, religion, art shouldn't also count as forms of human realization.